along with Dan, who is also an Associate Director of Admissions who graduated in 2006 and works with international applications. Justin is an admissions counselor who works with the website, along with Meredith, who graduated from Tufts in 2011 and is editor of Jumbo Magazine.
This is a long process for everybody involved, and I know when I was in high school I was very worried about where the application was going in particular, like whether somebody was actually physically touching it, whether it's able to screen the entire time, how many people read it, what physically happens to it after I press submit. So we wanted to ask the admissions office to give you a little bit of insight into that to hopefully assuage some of those fears.
A lot of us read from home, and so I was sitting at home at my desk in my pajama pants and my hoodie sweatshirt, which are awesome, and pull up your file online.
Do a lot of summarizing of everything you see, everything in your essays, and sometimes how we feel about them, but always in the context of how we feel about them being a part of the test.
Every few files when you get one that you're like, this one, like I'm going to go to committee and I'm going to fight like tooth and nail for this kid because I love them. That sort of makes it all really worth it.
So I know when I was writing my application, and I'm sure you agree, it was really easy to kind of obsess over what the readers were actually looking for in our applications, and kind of thinking, how do I come off of this application? So we really wanted to ask them just, what are they looking for? What is your goal when reading?
My main goal is to unpack the story that's inside.
That's the goal, I can't think it. Admit, absolutely, that's the goal. And which is like a weird and very counterintuitive thing to talk about because the admit rate at Tufts is 1 to 5 now. I mean, we're denying 4 to 5, which is 4 times as many kids as we're admitting. And so that I think is really counterintuitive for a lot of our applicants to hear. Like my goal when I'm opening up, you know, I mean, I read Baltimore and I read Bangkok. And like if I'm opening up an applicant from either of those places, the goal is the same: build the best possible case I can to admit a student.
Who are you? So being reflective about your life, about your experiences, about what you're doing. I always tell students it's not the what you're doing, but the how and why you're doing them, because I can clearly see what you're doing, but how and why, I can't see that. I can't jump into your mind. So when I put down your application, I want to feel like I just stepped out of your life. It's like, hey, here's what's so awesome about the student. Yay, this is great. Like, here's 4 different sides of this person. Oh my, like, I have a good grasp of what's happening. The students who don't do so well are the students who think there's something we want to read. There's nothing we want to read. I just want to know who you are.
Is this the kind of kid that's really excited about ideas, right? To be able to take a stand and express something, because I mean, I think that's part of what makes a community like this dynamic and interesting to be a part of, is that you're surrounded by people that are pushing you just a little bit to think about things differently.
We're not asking for answers that are, the campus is pretty, the tour was awesome, and the academics are hard. We want you to be specific, and that can be anything from, you know, Tufts makes me smile to specifically mentioning classes and professors. We just want to know if you're doing homework, and then the other essays are meant to draw you out a little bit.
You can't create new knowledge by saying, well, how do I not make a mistake? And so the group of students you're looking to enroll and to bring to a place like this that can further that academic mission are the kind of students who are capable of making mistakes and at the same time capable of not making mistakes, right? But if you look to admit a kid instead of looking to deny a kid, you end up with the students that will expand the sphere instead of the students that will turn in their homework and get A's without ever actually forcing their professors to consider their ideas.
So you don't just want perfect grade A's, you know, get good grades. You want someone who's bigger and more challenging.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the kids in your high school who got the best grades, some of them were probably the ones that you would be the most excited to sit in class with. And some of them were also probably horrifically boring.
Does the word count matter?
So the word count only matters if I notice that you've really gone over. You know, I never ever count.
But if we say, you know, write a 250-word supplement, and I'm reading 5 paragraphs, it's obviously not 250 words. And so it's more of a guiding principle, but not, okay, here's the law.
Do the admissions officers actually check Facebook when reading applications?
Do you check Facebook?
No. After reading thousands of applications in the season from people all over the world with different backgrounds, we wanted to know whether they actually learn anything from what they're reading.
I've learned that pogo sticking is a sport.
Interesting.
It's like an extreme sport.
Books that students will reference or talk about, movies that I don't necessarily know. And I can get what I need to know about them from the essay, so it's not as if I need to go find them immediately. But there are often times where it's like, that's where my summer book list comes from, is things that students have talked about.
Learn so many words, one. Like synesthesia. Last year, I had maybe 10 students who talked about seeing things as colors, and so numbers as colors or words as colors, and I was like, that's really different. Oh, that's interesting.
I had no idea what a 4-H club was until about 3 hours ago, and I Googled it.
Even a year out of high school, I know there's so much advice I would still give myself. I do give a lot of my senior friends. That's weird. But we wanted to ask the admissions officers if they have any advice they want to give themselves, because this is an incredibly personal process. You'll see that even their answers differ.
I would have given myself so much advice.
To be empowered to think that the things I was doing were cool. Because it seems like when you're not doing the most unique thing you've ever heard of, it seems less important. But I think that could be part of the truth. What makes it interesting is what you do and what you pair it with, and the attitude you take to it. So they are interesting. And what's interesting about it is what you bring to it as opposed to how it defines you.
My colleague Justin has a really good piece of advice. He always says,
I love your list.
and he told me that after I started working here, and all of a sudden it was like, click, like, of course.
I knew that anywhere I got in, from safety school to a reach school and anywhere in between, would be somewhere I'd be happy, and that made all the difference. So that's sort of like, when I get asked about advice, that's the best human-to-human advice I can give.
So we hope that that gave you guys some things to think about while you're writing your applications.
Good luck with everything, and we really hope to see you next fall.
Okay, a couple things about the video. That's a small school, so if you're applying to small private schools, that's going to apply. What happened there, what they're talking about, is going to apply big time. It's not going to apply as much at a private or a public university because the way they do things is a little different. They usually have a clearinghouse of your standardized tests. You got to get by that first. If you have the right level there, you move on to the next step. But ultimately, there is a decision like that at your public universities too. Okay? I wrote some things down just for you guys on this. Was they're looking not at what you've done, but they're looking at the how and the why. Why are you doing these things? Why are you involved in these clubs? Why did you take that leadership position? Why are you playing that sport? How has it affected you? If you tell, we're going to talk a little bit about your resume. So the resume is going to list a bunch of facts on it, but they want to know the how and the why behind that. That's what differentiates you from other people. They want to know who you are. Okay? The other thing, and this is something that I don't know many students know this, is that these admissions officers are looking for reasons to admit you. They're admissions officers. Their job is to make a case, to build a case, to admit you. So you're working with them. They're not opposed to you. Okay? So you want to give them every possible case that you can. And I'm going to give you the secret to really help you write a good essay. Does anybody feel kind of worried about or struggling with how you're going to do these essays and short answers? Let me tell you the secret on how you do this. This is something that you might have done when you went to visit the school. If you haven't, you can still call the school. You're going to need to call them to ask them this question. If you went to visit the school, the easy way to do this when you call them, I'll tell you. So you say, look, hey, I really enjoyed my visit. I came to visit your school in June. And I had a good time on the visit, but I forgot to ask a question. Can I ask you, what criteria for admissions is most important in your school? Right? I mean, if you could create the perfect student out of dust, what would you do? What would that person look like? What attributes would they have? What is the criteria that you're looking for in a student? Okay? The ideal way to do that is to find the person in the admissions office that is responsible for your last name, your letter in the alphabet. Because they take notes as to who calls in. Goes into a database, and then they get your application 2 months later. They are tracking those things. And that is a big deal to call and ask questions like that. But if you get that information, if they feed you that information back, what can you then do with it? What can you do with it? You can feed it right back to them in an essay, right? You can feed it right back to them in your short answer. You think that'll help you? You're just telling them what they already told you they're looking for. So you can weave that into your essay. If you can only ask one question, that's what you want to do. So if you feel like this is the school, in your mind, this is your number one choice, but you're worried about it and you really want these to look good, call the school, call the admissions office. Say, hey, I had a great time on the visit, just got this one question for you. I'm telling you, it works. I mean, you're basically getting an answer key for how to write your essay. Okay? Will that help you guys, you think? Will that help? Okay. All right, a couple of things you guys can do now. And you may want to touch base with your guidance counselor. A lot of this stuff has gone completely electronic, so this may not be a big deal to them anymore. But it doesn't hurt to kill them with kindness. Your guidance counselor is extremely important right now, because they are the ones responsible for getting your transcripts out to the colleges on time and in the deadline space. So what would be good to do is to contact that person and say, look, I've already got my list picked out, I know where I'm applying. Do you need that information? What can I do to help you get my transcripts out on time? Is there anything I can do to be proactive? How many students do you think are going to come and ask them that? Not many, right? Yeah.
Can you go ahead and get your transcripts sent to certain out-of-state schools even if you want to submit application?
You can, but you want to check with the school to make sure they're okay with that. Some of them are and some of them aren't. You got to remember they're all independent. They don't follow a set of rules. Generally, the colleges are all different. So the answer is probably yes. If you're going to apply there, a lot of times they'll say, yeah, go ahead and send. But some of them don't want you to do that. So you might just want to call the out-of-state schools. Are you talking about Tennessee?
Just that.
Because they will. You can do that with them, but you probably want to call just to be sure. And find out if there's anything they need from you. Yeah, just be proactive. Really, it will help. Because they have your whole class they have to deal with. It may not be everybody, but it's going to be 300 kids they're going to have to deal with in September. So you're doing 6 or 7 applications. They've got 300 kids to get transcripts out. So you want to make sure that's done. Of course, it would also be good to make sure that your transcript looks good, that there isn't anything missing, that you're on track to graduate. You're not missing a class. That's kind of a big deal, right? So keep an eye out for that. Okay, now I have emailed this out a few times. Does everybody have either a copy of this or access to it? If you don't, you might want to take some notes on what I'm going to talk about now, because I want to go through some of the things that are in this packet so you guys understand why this is important. Okay? This is the boot camp document. All right. Pages 6 through 10 are really talking about the admissions process. I want to talk about page 6 and 7 first. And what this is talking about here is what part of your academic background are these schools looking at? How are they looking at them? You've got your high school record, your test scores, your activities and other accomplishments, essays and recommendations, and other factors. Okay? Now, a high school record is somewhere in the 35 to 50% range. That's going to count for their admissions process. Generally, if you want to look at this, your high school record, if you're looking at an in-state public school, or even an out-of-state public school, the high school record and your test scores are going to be 90% of the calculation. Okay? Because they're going to get a ton of applications, so they've got to be able to weed through them. So they have a little bit different scale. Your private schools, they may look at, say, 35% is your high school record, 25% are your test scores. And then they're going to be really conservative. 20% probably going to be activities and other accomplishments, recommendations, and other factors. So it's different at different schools. Generally, if you were to go and apply at Davidson, or if you were to go to Aspen and Davidson and say, look, my SAT scores, how much does that factor in? They're going to tell you it's about 25%. Some schools, like Wake Forest, it's now optional. You don't even have to report it if you don't want to. Okay? So some of the smaller schools really don't weight that very heavily. If you're not a good test taker, maybe that will change where you're looking at applying. Okay, just keep that in mind. All right. Pages 9 and 10 are talking about ways to build an impressive resume, which we're going to look at the actual format of the resume in a little bit. Okay. If you want to kind of, does everybody have their resume done or have a student resume? Do you have a resume that you created in school? Does everyone have it in the format that I sent out back in June, in the summertime? It's the one-page format. Does everyone have that or no? Yes, no? No? Okay, we're going to go over that. What you have, if you have a resume now that you created in school, that's good, but you're going to need to reformat it for college. You just need to take the information and I'm going to show you how to condense it down. But if you want to know how to organize it, the areas that they're looking at, basically the 9 different areas that you can categorize these into are sports, student government, if you're involved in that, school clubs and service organizations, academic honors, community service, debate and speech. So you're going to mix and match these. You're not going to be involved in all these. Jobs, music, and hobbies. Okay? So you may not have all 9 of those, maybe you got 5 of them. But you take those are the areas you want to focus on for your resume. And we'll get to the format of the resume in just a couple minutes. Pages 16 and 17 talk about common mistakes that we make when selecting a school. Just make sure when you look at your list that you're not making these mistakes, okay? For example, selecting a school based solely on subjective publication. So this would be anything you received in the mail, that you see online. I'm picking the school because of that. I don't know if anybody's doing that, but just be careful of it, okay? A lot of that is just marketing material. It may not be completely accurate to what you're looking for. Selecting the school because a friend is going there. Is anybody doing that? It's okay if you are, but that may not be the #1 criteria you want to use in picking a school, right? Selecting a school for prestige.